All right. So this is a lecture that we had a chance to do last weekend in Chicago. Hi. So good to see you. Okay. And so we are going to start by a few people have already contacted us after we did a lecture in Chicago asking for some reference in terms of reading. So we added this slide this morning. These are the main books that we got our information from. There is another book that's a book related to research that's in the presentation. Unfortunately, none of them is translated to English yet. First one is Life and Sex, the other one is Beyond the Pink and the Blue, and the third one is Homosexuality Under the Light of the Immortal Spirit. And but this lecture by André Moreira is actually available in English in a DVD that because he did it in England, and there was a translator while he was speaking. So actually, there is some material in English available. Okay, so before we start, I'm going to show you a video.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Zach Walls. I'm a sixth-generation Iowan and an engineering student at the University of Iowa, and I was raised by two women. My biological mom, Terry, told her grandparents that she was pregnant, that the artificial insemination had worked, and they wouldn't even acknowledge it. It actually wasn't until I was born and they succumbed to my infantile cuteness that they broke down and told her that they were thrilled to have another grandson. Unfortunately, neither of them lived to see her marry her partner Jackie of 15 years when they wed in 2009. My younger sister and only sibling was born in 1994. We actually have the same anonymous donors who are full siblings, which is really cool for me. And I guess the point is that our family really isn't so different from any other Iowa family. When I'm home, we go to church together, we eat dinner, we go on vacations. But we have our hard times too, we get in fights. Actually, my mom, Perry, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2000. It is a devastating disease that put her in a wheelchair, so we've had our struggles. But, we're Iowans. We don't expect anyone to solve our problems for us. We'll fight our own battles. We just hope for equal and fair treatment from our government. Being a student at the University of Iowa, the topic of same-sex marriage comes up quite frequently in classroom discussions. The question always comes down to, well, can gays even raise kids? And the conversation gets quiet for a moment, because most people don't really have an answer. And then I raise my hand and say, actually, I was raised by a gay couple. I'm doing pretty well. I scored in the 99th percentile on the ACT. I'm actually an Eagle Scout. I own and operate my own small business. If I was your son, Mr. Chairman, I believe I'd make you very proud. I'm not really so different from any of your children. My family really isn't so different from yours. After all, your family doesn't derive its sense of worth from being told by the state, you're married, congratulations. No, the sense of family comes from the commitment we make to each other, to work through the hard times so we can enjoy the good ones. It comes from the love that binds us. That's what makes a family. So what you're voting here isn't to change us. It's not to change our families, it's to change how the law views us, how the law treats us. You are voting for the first time in the history of our state to codify discrimination into our Constitution. A Constitution that, but for the proposed amendment, is the least amended Constitution in the United States of America. You are telling Iowans that some among you are second-class citizens who do not have the right to marry the person you love. So will this vote affect my family? Will it affect yours? Over the next 2 hours, I'm sure we're going to hear plenty of testimony about how damaging having gay parents is on kids. But in my 19 years, not once have I ever been confronted by an individual who realized independently that I was raised by a gay couple. And you know why? Because the sexual orientation of my parents has had zero effect on the content of my character. Thank you very much.
Okay, so in another speech, Zach Walls related an experience when he was 12 years old watching the 2004 convention. He stated, I remember politicians talking about protecting marriage from families like mine. Now, supporting a view of marriages between a man and a woman isn't radical. For many people, it's a matter of faith. We respect that. Watching that convention on TV, though, I felt confused, frustrated. Why didn't they think my family was a real family? Governor Y says he's against same-sex marriage because every child deserves a mother and a father. I think every child deserves a family as loving and committed as mine, because the sense of family comes from the commitment we make to each other to work through the hard times so we can enjoy the good ones. It comes from the love that binds us. That's what makes a family. Mr. Y, my family is just as real as yours. So we are going to try to look at some of the statements that he made under the light of Spiritism, and try to get an understanding of, again, the concepts of gay marriage, of gay families, which is obviously becoming more and more visible in our society. But to get there, we need to go over some basic concepts first. So let's start with the concepts that we are spirits. And it seems silly to be bringing this concept back because we all know that, right? We are spirits. But it's a concept that, as I have mentioned here before, we should every day, I think, when we get out of bed, the first thing that we should say to ourselves, you know, after doing our prayers is, I am a spirit. To see if that really kicks in and we actually start living, behaving, and thinking as immortal spirits. So it's something that we know, but we don't really know. So all that we're going to talk about is have as a base the fact that we are immortal beings. And that's the perspective that we are bringing here today. Now, in the Spirits book, the Spirits tell us that spirits do not have sex as we understand it. And our understanding of sex and sexuality is very tied to the physical body and to the expression of gender as it occurs on the physical body. But again, the whole entire concept this morning we are going to think about under the light of the immortal spirit. So what is the physical body? The physical body is a garment. It's something like everything else that is material, that is circumstantial and is transient and does not define who we are. So even my name, who are you? If I say I am Suzana, it only speaks to a certain period of time of the life of my spirit, because I'm also Joseph, I'm Caroline, and God knows who else I have been, right? So my name and my gender do not define me in essence. Belongs to the circumstances of this current incarnation. Now, let's talk about these universal forces that there are in the universe. There are two main universal forces in the universe. The first one, the most powerful one, and absolute one, is the force of love. And this is very important that we reflect about this. So, we were created by love. God is love in its maximum expression. And the goal of our existence, the reason why we exist is that God wants us in a relative way, because we'll never be absolute like God, but in all our power to become love. We are love, to express love, to be able to manifest this love in our lives. This is what we created for. Peace, happiness, harmony lies on our ability to feel love, to manifest love towards one another in an unconditional way as brothers and sisters. So we might be parents, we might be sons and daughters, uncles, cousins, friends, but ultimately, in reality and in essence, what we are is brothers and sisters under God. So all these roles that we play in the many different lives that we have one purpose. The purpose that we learn, again, to love one another unconditionally. And this is it. So then we have a second force, which is sexual energy. Now, sexual energy is the second most powerful force of the universe, and it's a force of creation. It's a force of action. So when God creates the universe, the planets, we are talking about sexual energy is the force of creation. When we are creating another human being, another physical body, is sexual energy, is creation. When I am working and I am helping and I am doing something for somebody else, it's sexual energy. When an artist is creating, when a musician is playing, it is sexual energy. It's a force of creation. It's a force that brings us the pleasure of being co-creators with God. So it's a force that allows us to grow and to evolve. Now the concept of reincarnation. So in order to evolve, we need to, as we know, immerse ourselves in the flesh many times to acquire all kinds of experiences. And so we will incarnate at times, many times in a female body, many times in a male body. Because each gender, each physical gender will provide us with different sets of experiences. So all of us will undergo this process in order that so we can acquire all the experiences needed for us to achieve full enlightenment. And because of that, Emmanuel and other authors will speak about this psychic phenomena of bisexuality. So we are all bisexuals, and we can think bisexuality in two different ways. Don't get scared with this idea. I'm not saying that you're going to be attracted to, you know, no. Let me explain. Don't feel threatened by this comment, right? What I'm trying to say is that two different things. One is because we all have been in male and female bodies, each one of us is going to have a portion of masculinity and femininity within ourselves. You see some guys that have a very strong dosage of femininity to them that, you know, without meaning that they're gay or anything like that, right? So we all have different proportions of these two forces or experiences in ourselves. Also, as we're going to see, in our core, in our essence, or we can call the unconscious, or we can call the spirit, all of us have the potentialities of femininity and masculinity in ourselves. And we're going to revisit this concept in a minute. So, when we look into the concept of evolution. So let me move forward and try to make it a little bit more clear. This is a concept that we find in the book Sexual Forces of the Soul by Jorge Andrea. So what he tells us is that in the beginning of the evolution, when we are just starting, we are going to tend to be on the beginning of this scale. Either experience a full polarity towards masculinity or a full polarity towards femininity. And what happens as we evolve and we incarnate and we experience both genders? We tend to move towards the middle of the graph. So, right there. So, as we're evolving, our sexuality is going to express based on the gender and the experiences that we have had the most. It's a sexuality of periphery that's going to determine our personalities, our tendencies, and our likes. Now, the most evolved spirits, what happens to them? They will no longer identify with any gender, male or female. They will have had plenty experiences on both genders, and the forces of masculinity and femininity will be fully integrated in themselves. So their sexuality, their sexual energy will be expressed from within, from the core, from the essence. And this sexuality no longer identify with gender, because gender has to do with earthly experiences. So it comes from within, it comes from the core. As we continue to evolve, our sexuality is going to be expressed by our periphery, not our core. We're in the process of evolving, of acquiring, of gathering experiences. So with those concepts, we move forward to possible spiritual scenarios for sexuality. And I'm talking about homosexuality. But right here, I wanted to bring this idea of, you know, when we're talking about reasons why people might be experiencing a life where they identify homosexual, could be the same reasons why people identify heterosexual. Okay, there's really no difference. All right, so, and I know that will come one day that we're gonna look back at these lectures, at these seminars, and we're gonna see, look, these people at this period of time, they really waste all this time trying to understand the reasons for homosexuality. We're not talking about what the reasons for heterosexuality are we? And why we are not? Because the assumption that we are working is the assumption that heterosexuality is the norm. If we didn't have this assumption, we wouldn't be here talking about this. Now, it's important that we make a difference between what's normal and what's natural. Because natural is everything that belongs to the natural laws, to the divine laws, to the laws of nature. And normal is everything that we, as society, in this level of evolution that we are, decide that it's normal. And there is a huge difference between these two concepts. And Emmanuel, in the book Life and Sex, he states very clearly at the end of the book, at the last chapter, if I'm not mistaken, that the concepts of normality that we have right now in regards to sexuality will evolve and will change. He says that things that we consider to be normal will no longer be normal. And things that right now we consider to be abnormal will be considered normal. And he leaves it like this, right? So, but since here is where we are, let's look at some of the causes. I mean, I'm not going to be able to speak about all of them, but I want to just point out that there are causes that can belong to the present moment. There are causes that can belong to past experiences. And it can be very complex. The reasons why, just like sexuality in general, is always a very complex subject. But one of the reasons, a natural consequence of emotional echoes of many past lives in one gender. Condition that facilitates the accomplishment of one's mission. Trial and expiation due to abuse of genetic faculties and other people's feelings. And condition derived from the present, such as educational process, traumas, or cultural influences. I'm going to focus on two of them that has more to do with what we're talking about, which is the evolution of the spirit and the acquiring of experiences throughout different genders. So the first one is natural consequence of emotional echoes of many past lives in one gender. Here's what Kardec tells us in the Spiritist magazine. It could be the case that a spirit incarnates a number of times under the same gender, which is something that could lead it to keeping either the male or female characteristics whose marks it still holds in either state, the spiritual or incarnate state. It is only at a certain level of progress in dematerialization that the influence of physical matter is completely eliminated along with gender ideation, precisely what we were talking about. Therefore, even if the spirit experiments a different gender in a new life, it could still keep the inheriting likes, tendencies, and nature of the gender it had before. Kardec spoke about this in the Spiritist magazine of 1861. No, that's cool, right? That's pretty progressive. All right. We're struggling with this in 2012, and Kardec was talking about it in 1861. Okay. So the other scenario is trial and expiations, and in my experience, even after I did this lecture in Chicago and when I spoke in San Francisco a year ago, You know, we get so many phone calls and emails afterwards where people do relate to this fact, and people are in deep conflict with themselves and in process of no-acceptance of themselves. I think it's important to talk about this because if we look at how we, as a society right now, homosexuals, heterosexuals, bisexuals, all sexuals, how we are dealing with our sexuality, the sexual energy, we can see that we are not doing a very good job in terms of using this energy in balanced and harmonious ways. People don't understand. There's tremendous amount of disrespect. Sexuality becomes cheaper. It's cheap. You know, we have moved from, you know, being extremely conservative to this, you know, freedom where, you know, you meet someone one day and the next day, you know, you move in with that person. So it has been, things have been gone really in the wrong direction. And like everything else, there will be consequences. So it's true that there are many spirits who can find themselves after discarnating in processes of guilt because they have misused their sexual energy. They have perhaps disrespect themselves in first place, disrespect others, and they may ask to come back in sometimes the gender that they have disrespect. And if that happens, they will face some challenges. The challenges include incarnation, a gender that they are trying to learn to value because they have disrespected, the challenge of being a minority, the challenge of living societies where homosexuality is seen and understood as a disease, and even in societies where it's no longer seen as a disease, a lot of times we still hold that concept in ourselves. And we will treat people from this perspective because that has been a concept and an idea that we have nourished and we have been taught throughout so many centuries in the religious movements that, you know, it's not because, you know, the American Psychiatry Association or American Psychological Association decide that's no longer disease that we are going internally to be able to embrace the concept. So we intellectually know it, but our prejudices and our misconceptions a lot of times remain within us. So even in a society like, you know, the American society, the challenges, the hostility, the prejudice is extremely high. The challenge of self-acceptance and self-love. This is a challenge that we all face. In our stage of evolution, self-love, self-acceptance, and self-esteem are challenges because we are so far from God. We are so far from feeling divine that, you know, it's just very difficult to identify with our essence. So it's a struggle for each one of us. Then, if you're struggling to build your identity, you're struggling to love yourself, and you have a society that's telling you that you are not normal, that this is not normal, that there is something essentially wrong with you, if your family is putting you out of their homes, not accepting for who you are, then the challenge is huge. If you have to live in the closet and you cannot come to your spiritual center and say, this is my wife, then you have to hide your affection. You have to pretend that you are something else or somebody else. How can you love yourself? How can you accept yourself, right? And it's a learning process for all of us. So many of my friends come to me and say, how is your friend? Well, Sherry's not my friend. She's my wife, she's my partner, but she's not my friend. I don't ask David, hey David, how is your friend Fatima doing? right? But that shows our level of discomfort in dealing with the situation, in fully embracing it, because we all have, you know. And I smile, I always smile, and I like, okay, because I need to respect people's times and level of comfort, because I myself underwent many years of analysis to deal with my own prejudices, with my own non-acceptance, until I came to a place of full acceptance where I can stand in front of you and talk about it without any problem. But we have some other challenges ahead. So building of self-esteem and identity, the fight for natural rights such as the freedom of love and family, which we are moving forward, thank God, right? With acquiring these rights, and we'll talk a little bit more. So it's a challenge of inner work. And I think, again, the biggest challenge is the challenge of embracing who you are, understanding that this is just another natural possibility in all the possibilities that we have for evolution, that there is nothing wrong. Society has decided that's not normal, but where are we getting our references from? We should get it from God. And that's our main reference. In the immortality of our souls, and the concepts that we are immortal spirits, this should be our reference. Not what people are telling, like Zach Wall says, you know, my sense of worth is not going to come from a court that's going to tell me, you know, whether it's okay or not for me to marry the person that I love. It comes from the sense that I am a divine being, comes from the sense that I am a spirit, and I have the right to love another spirit, whomever that spirit may be, or in whatever that spirit, body that spirit might be. Okay, so if we think about the principle, the idea that we all need to do better when it comes to the realm of sexuality, all of us are here educating our sexual energy with the challenge of learning to love, so we can be in line with that first force that I talk about. Whether we are heterosexual, homosexuals, the lessons are the same. We need to learn to love one another through committed relationships, where we learn to go beyond the passions, beyond that ego that seeks adoration, and we are able to experience the deeper level of love, where we come to a place of respect, of commitment, on goods and bad times, for real. For real. So marriage, according to the Spiritist doctrine, the Spirit Emmanuel was asked one time, is it allowed for two same-gender persons to live under the same roof as husband and wife? And he said, in response to this question, the encoder of the Spiritist doctrine has added question 695 in the Spirit's book that reads, is marriage, that is to say, the permanent union of two beings, contrary to the law of nature? It is a progress arrived by human race. Our incarnate friends in the physical realm, with the task of maintaining and looking after the Spiritist doctrine, are able to study and make conclusions from the above text. I don't know about you, but it seems pretty clear to me that Emmanuel is telling that marriage is a progress arrived by human race, because marriage allows this very important relationship where two people come together with the commitment to learn to love one another. It's a very difficult commitment that we make. It takes a lot to be married for a long time, right? But it's an incredible lab, a powerful lab for any soul. The ability to work on marriage, to make sacrifices, to renounce, to respect. And so it is one of the tools that we have, is a divine tool where we can work on loving one another. Then the idea of adoption Let's look about adoption. In the Gospel according to Spiritism, we learn that the body proceeds from the body, but the spirit does not proceed from the spirit. Meaning, we can, through procreation, generate bodies, but we don't generate spirits. So, spirits are generated by God. And behind that idea is the idea that we don't belong to anyone. No one belongs to anyone. When I say my son, he's truly not my son. He's temporarily in the position of my son, but he doesn't belong to me. In another life, he may be my uncle, my cousin, right? So we are all spirits in this journey of enlightenment. And when a couple, a person decides to adopt, it's coming from the sense that we are immortal beings in this journey. And I'm saying to you, listen, I'm going to bring you to my home and under my love. And for this period of time, I commit, even though you didn't come from my flesh, to educate you, to love you, so you can become someone in this life. So it's an act of unconditional love where we're looking at another being from the immortal perspective, outside of this narrow view of belonging, of blood family. So we move into the concept of universal family, which is ultimately the concept that we are moving towards. Everybody's my family. When I left Brazil, I was very naturally sad and, you know, scared. And, you know, I would say to my mom, I'm going to miss you so much. And she said to me, the world is your home, and you go there and you make another family for yourself. Other brothers, other sisters, have children, right? Because this is it. She is for a few years in the role of my mother, but she's just a spirit that is a friend of mine. And so the role, the goal of our lives is to make as many friends and bring as many people to be part of our spiritual family. So adoption is an incredible act of unconditional love, and another lab, another space that's given to the spirit for the practice of love. And then family, the concept of family. In the book The Consoler, question 175, Emmanuel tells us that family is a sacred institution, creating a space where spirits with past commitments can meet again to develop on earth the constructive task of real brotherhood. So, it is a sacred institution. We're not born in a family accidentally. We are there with the people that we need to do. Even when we adopt kids, they don't come to our families randomly. There is a divine plan. We are all getting together for a reason. So again, it's a space for love. It's a space for the exercise of love. And a lot of times, people were threatened by these new families that are being formed, the gay families. And like Zach Wall says, they think that the gay families are going to somehow destroy the heterosexual families, the society, right? As if my ability to manifest affection for my wife or to have my kids with me will change how you love or how you feel, or will change society as a whole in any way. So diversity, if anything, adds to society. These families add to society. I mean, diversity is an excellent tool for enlightenment. Being able to be with difference and to be understanding and respectful and embracing, even if we don't agree, is still an awesome spiritual exercise. Interestingly, Scott Page in this book says that group decision making is best when the group reflects unique perspectives and ways of thinking. The key lies in bringing together individuals with different backgrounds and life experiences. The result will be a messy process, but one which outperforms groups of like-minded individuals chosen on the basis of extensive experience and high IQ. So you get a group of people that's very homogeneous, very intelligent, and you have a group of people with very different ideas and backgrounds. At first, the process is pretty messy, but later, because people are bringing such a diversity and the experiences are so rich, the outcome outperforms the other group that's more homogeneous. So it's more challenging, but the outcome is richer. Let's put it this way. All right, so let's just take a quick look at some of the research about this family so we can get to know them better, what they are about. Like Zach Walls says, my family is not really different than your families. In one of these speeches, she says, you know what, maybe my family is a little different in one sense. For instance, he says, I'm very good at lowering the toilet seat. And I'm telling Jake, lower the seat for the ladies. And he will say that. He will say that. Mama, I'm lowering the seat for the ladies. Good job. Good job. And so let's look at a little bit. And this is another book that we highly recommend for anyone who is trying to understand a little bit of the research, more recent research on the subject. So we talk about long-term relationships, and you know, if you're married, if you've been married for a long time, you know that it's challenging. It's challenging. Now, you're trying to be in a long-term, in a committed relationship, dealing again with the hostility of society, having to hide your feelings, not having the rights and the benefits that heterosexual couples have. So if your partner's in the hospital, it might be a messy process just to get a visitation. You're not entitled to some of the economical benefits that heterosexual couples, they're married. And we know how money, for instance, can be a very challenging subject for any relationship, right? And now we're dealing with more difficulties than the regular heterosexual, you know, couple deal with. So the research says that, you know, these relationships, these folks, they're in long-term relationships, they show notable strength and endurance, because besides the normal challenge, they have all these other challenges in a society that does not recognize their marriage. Families also face very unique challenges, and I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I'm here at Conscious Living, and I'm going to extend a little bit so I can bring you some examples. I spoke about how you know, it took me a long time and a lot of work to come in terms with my own self and my own identity. And now with the kids, we face new challenges. And I'll tell you a quick story. We take our kids, I take the kids mostly to school, and there's this 6-year-old girl who, you know, has seen Sherry. And she asked me, are you the mommy? Yes. Is the other one the mommy? Yes. She's like puzzled, right? She's like, okay. So then another day, are you the mommy? Yes. And the other one is the one? Yes. And then I said, you know, there are different types of families. You know, one day I told her, Sherry told her, I don't know, different types of families. Some families have a mom and a daddy. Some families have just one mommy. Some families have one daddy. Some families are made by grandparents. And some families have 2 mommies, and some families have 2 daddies. But when she first questioned that, the feeling was like, oh my God, what do I do now? You know, and then you have to deal again with your own feelings. And you have a kid that's questioning you, questioning my family structure. And so it's very easy to be shaken by these experiences. Now we've gone through it a few times. I'm getting better at it. But, you know, just to conclude this story, the last time I saw this girl, I dropped the kids off, and she found a solution for our situation. So she looked at me and she said, I know. I said, tell me. She said, The other one is the mommy, and you were the grandmother. And I don't know why she made me the grandmother. Golly. Okay, so those are just some of the challenges, you know, that we face, and the kids are trying to understand, you know. So there's some more stories, but it wouldn't fit here. So looking at the family, a couple of things, like the division of work is usually more even, and for that I'm very thankful. Freedom of roles in terms of sexuality, masculinity and femininity. The kids, even though they will face some challenges, they show very good mental health. Being raised by gay parents, there's no effect on the kids' sexual orientation, as many thought before. So heterosexual families will have, you know, kids that will be homosexual just as much as homosexual families may have some of their kids that will turn out homosexual. And the notions of gender are also more flexible. And so I'll tell you one other quick story. So what does this mean? Means that, you know, in our home we are 3 girls and 1 boy. And so Tati's very much into makeup and nail polish, which I guarantee you she didn't get neither from me or Sherry. But you know, so Jake wants to polish his nails as well. And then at first I was like, Jake, this is for girls. And then Sherry, who's a lot more conscious than I am, was like, why are you saying that to him? You know, he wants to polish it, let him do it. Because we determined that some things are for girls and some things are for boys. In our entire education and everything is gender oriented. But what is gender? And what is the threat? And what if he wants to polish his nails? What does that mean? Think about it. Think about it. Most people freak out. They are threatened by the fact that your kid is polishing their nails. But truly, what does that mean? And I'm not going to answer. It's for us to think about it, right? And so I said to him, you know, after working on my own stuff, I said, okay, go ahead and polish your nails. But let me tell you something. If you go to school like this because you want to, you know, educate them from the mortal perspective, but they are in a society where people are living under the mortal perspective, so you need to protect your kid too. And you need to tell them, look, this is okay, but there's some people that will, you know, make fun of you, whatever is the situation. So you have to find this balance as you are educating the kids. But the most important as we come to a closing is be who you are, love who you love. And a lot of, you know, like I said, a lot of the calls that I get, the emails that I get are people who are really struggling to be who you are. And, you know, the first and most important thing is that we love ourselves. If we cannot love ourselves, accept ourselves as we are. And now I'm talking about not even under homosexual, all of us. We all have stuff, right? It's important that we love ourselves, that we accept ourselves, because this love and this compassion and this acceptance is going to reflect also in the ways in which we treat and deal with others. And I want to propose a change in paradigm, because this paradigm of sickness, of disease, is so ingrained in our beings and in our society. At this point, I think, you know, that we really should move forward and start seeing sexuality as in general as a blessing. Whatever is your experience, whatever is your feeling, whatever is that you are, the most important thing is that you make good use of the opportunity that you're undergoing. The most important thing is that you use this time and the possibilities and the people that come into your life to make it tools for enlightenment. So if you have all those challenges are precious opportunities for growth, for enlightenment, for broadening of our minds and our perceptions of the world and of ourselves. And for the Spiritist Center, it is important that we start to introduce these concepts. When we are teaching, for example, our children, right? And the class is about family. Are we still talking just family, mommy and daddy and the kids, or are we broadening? Because, you know, forget about homosexuality. I mean, science is evolving. I mean, we can have kids without having sex these days, right? So even families are being generated in different ways, and all those changes need to be reflected in the ways that we teach and educate our children. So I'm gonna close with this little story that I like we read sometimes to our kids before they go to bed. And we have a number of stories that talk about different families, talk about adoptions, and that if anyone is interested, we can definitely come up with a small list. But so, this is the story, the family book. Some families are big. Some families are small. Some families are the same color. Some families are different colors. Some families look alike. Some families look like their pets. Some families have a stepmom or stepdad and stepsisters or stepbrothers. Some families adopt children. Some families have 2 moms and 2 dads. Some families eat the same things. Some families eat different things. Some families like to be noisy. Some families like to be quiet. Some families like to be messy. Some families like to be clean. All families can help each other be strong. There are lots of different ways to be a family. Your family is special, no matter what kind it is. Thank you.